Daniel Boone was born on October 22, 1734, in a log cabin in the Ole Valley of Pennsylvania. His father, Squire Boone, was an English-born blacksmith, and his mother Sarah's family came from Wales. Growing up at the forest's edge, Daniel learned to hunt as soon as he could hold a rifle, and by 15 he was already known as one of the best marksmen in the region. In 1750 the Boones left Pennsylvania for the Yadkin River Valley of North Carolina. Daniel thrived in the backcountry, spending his youth hunting deer, bear, and wild turkey. He befriended Catawba and Cherokee hunters, learning their tracking and survival skills and developing a lasting respect for native knowledge of the land. At 21 he married Rebecca Bryan, a resilient partner in a demanding world. Rebecca proved as skilled with a musket and axe as she was with raising children. The couple built a cabin along the Yadkin and soon began a large family. Daniel supplied meat and pelts from long hunts, while Rebecca managed the home, gardens, and livestock during his frequent absences. Their partnership balanced risk and steadiness, and it endured. Boone's early adulthood unfolded amid the French and Indian War. In 1755 he joined General Edward Braddock's expedition as a wagoner during the march against French-held Fort Duquesne. The campaign collapsed in the woods, yet it brought Boone into contact with John Finley, a fur trader whose stories of Kentucky described a hunter's paradise beyond the mountains. Those stories took hold. Though Boone returned to North Carolina, the dream of Kentucky's untracked forests pulled at him. After the Cherokee War of 1759, many settlers, including the Boones, fled temporarily to Virginia. When peace returned, the Yadkin filled with newcomers and the game grew scarce. Restless and eager for land, Boone began to wonder if he should move his family to a new frontier. In 1765 he scouted Spanish Florida, which had just come under British control. When he proposed relocating, Rebecca refused to go so far from kin. Boone deferred. Instead, the family moved to a more isolated tract of the Yadkin where he could hunt deeper into the Blue Ridge Mountains and range far from settled clearings. Boone first touched the fringes of Kentucky in the fall of 1767 on a brief hunting trip across the Appalachians with his brother Squire. He learned the passes and the look of the country beyond. The decisive chance came in 1769 when Finley returned to North Carolina. Recognizing Boone's skill, he urged a full venture into the western woods. In May 1769 Boone, Finley, and 4 companions rode through the Cumberland Gap and descended into the untamed frontier. Boone's first impression exceeded even his dreams, a land of endless stretches of grassland, rivers alive with fish, and hardwood forest untouched by European axes. For many months the party lived as lone hunters. They built camps, dried meat, and mapped ridges in their minds. But the Kentucky paradise was not without peril. The Shawnee, in particular, regarded Kentucky as their hunting ground and resented these white intruders. In late 1769, a Shawnee war party surprised Boone and a companion and confiscated all their collected furs, warning them to leave Kentucky and never come back. Boone returned to North Carolina in 1771 with little profit, but with stories and resolve. In 1773 he organized about 50 migrants, including family and neighbors, and set out toward the Gap with wagons, cattle, and hope. Tragedy struck near the mountains when a mixed group of Delaware, Shawnee, and Cherokee warriors attacked a scouting party that included Boone's teenage son James. James and others were killed with brutal cruelty. Shocked and grieving, the settlers turned back. Boone carried his loss back to the Yadkin and waited for a safer opening. In 1774 frontier conflict reignited. During Lord Dunmore's War, Virginia's royal governor sent Boone and a companion to warn a surveying party of imminent danger. Boone traversed 800 miles of wilderness in a few months, found the surveyors, and escorted them safely back to Virginia. Soon after, he served as a militia officer at the Battle of Point Pleasant, and the subsequent treaty forced a Shawnee withdrawal south of the Ohio River. On paper, Kentucky opened to Virginia's settlers. Early in 1775 Boone received the commission that would define his name. Richard Henderson, a wealthy North Carolina judge hoping to establish a colony, hired Boone to lead axemen to cut a road through the mountains. Boone's trace, the Wilderness Road, took shape as men widened old native and buffalo trails into a rough track for wagons. An ambush on March 25 cost 2 lives, but Boone pressed on, knowing that planting a fortified station would be the only way to hold the country. He chose a site on the Kentucky River and helped raise a stockade settlement named Fort Boonesborough. That same spring he returned for Rebecca and their children and led them through the Gap. The Boones and allied families became among the first Anglo-Americans to settle west of the Appalachians, and they began the everyday work of making a foothold, hewing cabins, planting corn, and setting watches at dusk. Life at Boonesborough was precarious. The fort stood on the edge of native-held ground, and the American Revolution, beginning in 1775, sharpened danger as British agents supplied Shawnee, Cherokee, and other tribes to strike the Kentucky stations. Chores were done with rifles at hand, and a trip for water could invite an ambush. In July 1776 Boone's teenage daughter Jemima and the Callaway sisters, Betsy and Fanny, were captured while canoeing near the fort. Boone gathered a small rescue party and launched a swift pursuit, reportedly so urgent that he left without shoes. For 3 days the men tracked the captors by bent twigs and traces on the forest floor, then ambushed them at dusk and brought the girls home. The rescue became celebrated far beyond Kentucky and stiffened the resolve of the settlers within the palisade. However, the pressure continued. In 1777, Blackfish, a Shawnee chief aligned with the British, sent war parties against Boonesborough. Short of food and powder, the settlers measured each day by alarms. In early 1778, salt, vital for preserving meat, had run out. Boone led 30 men to the Blue Licks to boil brine. While he hunted, a large Shawnee force surprised him. Understanding a greater attack was coming and that a fight at the Licks could doom the fort, Boone urged his men to surrender rather than be cut down to the last man. They were taken to Old Chillicothe, a major Shawnee settlement in present-day Ohio. There, Boone and his party faced a trial that often ended in death, running the gauntlet. Boone survived the brutal ordeal, battered but alive, and his courage earned him adoption by Chief Blackfish, who sought to replace a lost son. This was a common Shawnee practice, transforming enemies into family. Boone learned their language and customs, joined hunts, and was treated as one of their own. Though he adapted to their ways, he remained watchful and waited. In June 1778, Boone learned that Blackfish planned a major assault on Boonesborough with British support. He slipped away, crossed rough country, and covered about 160 miles in 5 days. On June 20th, he walked into the fort to the astonishment of settlers who had thought him dead. He immediately strengthened defenses, organized the garrison, and prepared for the blow he knew would fall. In early September, Blackfish arrived and ringed the station. For nearly 2 weeks, the attackers tried the walls. The settlers, perhaps 40 men and a few women, returned the fire and kept discipline. Frustrated in having taken losses, Blackfish finally lifted the siege on September 20th and withdrew. Following the siege, new settlers began streaming into Kentucky, inspired by heroes like Boone. By the fall of 1779, Boone established a new homestead called Boone Station near present-day Lexington. He preferred its fields and hunting to crowded Boonesborough. Violence, however, remained part of frontier life. In 1780, Daniel's younger brother Edward Ned Boone was ambushed and killed by Shawnee while out hunting. Daniel was deeply saddened by the loss. However, 2 years later came Boone's deepest wound. In August 1782, a force of Shawnee and allied tribes lured around 180 Kentucky militiamen, including Boone, into a trap near the Licking River. Boone, experienced and wary, urged caution and suggested waiting for reinforcements, but other officers charged ahead. The Kentuckians were swiftly overwhelmed. During the chaotic retreat, Boone's 23-year-old son Israel was fatally shot while fighting beside his father, dying in Boone's arms as he narrowly escaped. Peace followed shortly after, and Kentucky changed swiftly. With the war over in 1783, migrants poured in, cabins multiplied, and fields broadened. Boone, nearing 50, became famous through John Filson's widely read book, which cast him as the model pioneer. Fame did not simplify his days. He worked as a surveyor and land speculator, briefly ran a tavern in Limestone, and served as a militia colonel. Though he disliked politics, his reputation led to his election to the Virginia legislature in 1781 and 1787, representing Fayette County. However, the law proved a more stubborn adversary than any siege. Kentucky's land system was tangled with entries, surveys, and filings. Boone often lost property through missteps or conflicting claims, and on one trip to secure land warrants, money entrusted to him was stolen, which worsened his problems. Later legend would call him a naive backwoodsman, but the truth was mixed. He sometimes prospered, and was generous to neighbors, but grew weary of endless disputes. By 1798, disillusioned with lawsuits and crowds and courtroom quarrels, he quietly decided to look west again. In 1799, nearly 65, Boone led family and kin to Spanish-held Missouri, lured by free land and the familiar promise of open woods. The Spanish governor welcomed him, granted 850 acres in the Femme Osage Valley, and appointed him syndic, a local magistrate. Boone's fairness drew settlers, and he heard disputes beneath trees and in cabins with a calm voice and steady judgment. The country was thinly settled, and it suited him. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803 made Boone an American again and voided Spanish titles. Because he had given land to his children and failed to register his own claim, he also lost plenty of his own state. At 75, he petitioned Congress, which in 1814 restored several hundred acres in recognition of his service. Boone sold most of it to clear old debts that had followed him from Kentucky. Despite bureaucratic setbacks, Daniel Boone cherished his life in Missouri, living in a modest cabin on his son Nathan's land. Even in his 70s, his adventurous spirit endured. In 1810, at age 76, he led a trapping expedition deep into present-day Kansas and Nebraska, returning with a fortune in furs. As Boone aged, his fame grew. Americans saw him as a living symbol of the pioneer spirit. In 1813, he suffered the loss of his wife Rebecca, his companion of 57 years, which left him deeply weary. He moved in with Nathan's family as his health declined, though he remained active. In 1816, the U.S. government awarded him a pension for his long-past militia service. Near the end of his life, Daniel Boone began dictating notes for an autobiography to correct the many myths surrounding him, though the manuscript was never completed. One tale claims it was lost in a river accident. By fall 1820, Boone, age 85, was growing frail. During a visit to his daughter Jemima, he fell seriously ill and died peacefully on September 26 with family at his side. Legend says the last buffalo in eastern Missouri was killed that same day, symbolizing the close of an era. Boone was buried beside his wife Rebecca on a Missouri hillside. The graves went unmarked for some years, but locals knew the spot and paid their respects to the man who had become a symbol of the American West. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deeper look into the adventurous life of Daniel Boone, trailblazer of the American frontier, legendary woodsman, and a symbol of rugged individualism who helped carve the path westward, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you're first to know when we explore more iconic figures who shaped history. See you next time.